to another episode of Remember the Great Sports All-Time Roster Edits, or NBA 2K19. Today we're going to cover the Detroit Pistons. Technically the Fort Wayne Pistons, then the Detroit Pistons. So there are a couple players that need to be changed off this team, in my opinion. Some of them are Hall of Famers that have been neglected. I don't want to say neglected, but maybe overlooked. And I will add those Hall of Famers to this list, and I will tell you one of the players, in my opinion, may be a Hall of Famer someday, that I add to this list, and hopefully you'll agree with my changes. So let's take a look at what we got here. And the first one I'm going to delete is Mr. Jerry Stackhouse. Now, I know this may not be a popular move, but you're going to have to stay with me on this because I actually replace him with a Hall of Famer. So that is the reason that Stackhouse is not remaining on this game. As you can see, he was a very successful player for the Pistons for a couple seasons. However, the person that I added, I feel, just gets the notch ahead of him. If Stack was a Piston for longer than the 4 years that he was there, I would say hands down, probably him. But these are, again, my preferences. You could always leave Stack on there if you like. So Dave DeBusschere, Dave Bing stings, Big Ben stays, Hamilton, Laimbeer, Drummond. And the final two to go are Vinnie Johnson, okay, the microwave, and Rick Mahorn. Rick Mahorn, not really sure why he's on this list. There's a lot of great Pistons that aren't. So that's kind of a surprise to even see him on here. So Rick Mahorn goes and Vinnie Johnson. So stay with me, and we will show you the three additions to this roster and the starting lineups. Alright, so here we are with the starting lineup for the Pistons. This should come to no surprise to you. I believe this is the stock starting lineup. Maybe not Dennis Rodman, I'm not sure. But Isiah Thomas at your point guard, Joe Dumars at your starting shooting guard, Grant Hill at your starting small forward, the Worm, Dennis Rodman at your starting power forward, of course, you know, a Hall of Famer. Hall of Famer Bob Lanier at the starting center. I feel this is probably the best you could probably put together because, you know, these, I mean, this is almost like a Hall of Fame starting lineup. So, you know, I feel this is, you can't do much better than this for the Pistons. Now, your backup point guard is Chauncey Billups. You know, he was there during their success in the early 2000s when they won their championship. You know, formidable backup point guard, or he can play the shooting guard as well. So very good to have him on the team. This is the first addition to the team, and this is Rasheed Wallace. This is the one that I feel probably should go in the Hall of Fame someday. He is that good of a player. Often overlooked because he played during an era when there are a lot of good power forwards like Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Karl Malone towards the end of his career, to name a few. I just feel that he's kind of often overlooked during that era. Chris Webber would be another one, because of those Hall of Famers that played then. However, Sheed was very good, and he was on the Pistons championship team when they won. And hopefully one day he'll get his induction into the Naismith Hall of Fame as well. Dave DeBusschere, also at power forward. DeBusschere is a Hall of Fame player as well. Excuse me. He could play your power forward or your small forward, but he was a rebounding specialist. He also would dump in about 10 or 15 a game, you know, scoring-wise. So definitely got to have him on the list as well. Another shooting guard / small forward would be Richard Hamilton. Again, another integral piece of that Pistons successful team in the early 2000s. Now, this is another one that I added, and this is George Yardley. Now, George Yardley was going way back when it comes to the Detroit Pistons. Yardley is a pure shooter. He was one of the guys that played before the three-point line existed. He could play the small forward or the shooting guard position on this team. I feel that he often gets overlooked despite being a Hall of Famer. And I think that's why he should be on this team ahead of Jerry Stackhouse. That's just my honest opinion. However, if you prefer Stackhouse over Yardley, that's completely understandable. Dave Bing is the backup point guard. Dave Bing is a Hall of Fame point guard as well. I would not put him above Chauncey Billups, but he is very amicable, playing the point guard or the shooting guard position on this team as well. The 12th man on the roster is Big Ben Wallace, defensive specialist, rebounding specialist. You're not going to get a whole lot of offense out of this guy, but if you're playing some of the all-time great teams on this game, this would be one heck of a person to put on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Wilt Chamberlain and see how well he defends him. This is definitely somebody to have on this team as well. Rounding out the bottom of the list is another big man, and now you can understand why Rick Mahorn has no place on this team, is Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer, one of the bad boys. He was the center on that team. He could also slot in at the power forward position if that's your preference. Laimbeer, another guy that you could put in there for defensive purposes, but he also has some good offensive skills, over Ben Wallace. He could occasionally spot up and hit a three if you needed him to, believe it or not. But Bill Laimbeer, definitely, if not to have a guy to just start a fight on your team. That's why you need him on the bench. No, I'm just kidding. That'd be cool if you could do that in NBA 2K. Like start a brawl like they used to back in the 80s. That'd be a unique thing. So Bill Laimbeer rounds out the 13th player. Now, to fill out the roster, the 14th guy is power forward Bailey Howell. Bailey Howell goes way back. Again, old school Piston. He was a very formidable power forward for them. One of the all-time greats of that era. All-time greats of that era. If your preference is to put a smaller power forward on the team over Bill Laimbeer, that's understandable. But I just chose to leave him as a reserve on this team and put Laimbeer ahead of him. Finally, Andre Drummond. Again, here's another center. How many centers can you have on a team, though? Now, if your preference is Andre Drummond over Bill Laimbeer, perfectly understandable. I personally wouldn't put him ahead of Big Ben because you're taking away a defensive specialist in Ben Wallace, where I feel Drummond is probably all around a better player than Bill Laimbeer. So really, if you'd rather have Drummond over Laimbeer, that's understandable. But I personally like playing with Bill Laimbeer just to bring back the nostalgia of the Bad Boys Pistons. So that's why I left him on there. Now, honorable mention, if I were to put a 16th player on this team, other than Stackhouse, okay, Tayshaun Prince. We'll talk about Tayshaun Prince here. But I couldn't put him ahead of George Yardley. That was kind of my thought process. Maybe Tayshaun, in some people's mind, belongs on this team. He is a great elite defender. I don't know who I would knock off this list, though, other than maybe Bill Laimbeer for Tayshaun Prince. So that's just my honest gut feeling about these teams. If Tayshaun Prince is a better fit in your opinion, I would say get rid of Bill Laimbeer. I would not take Bailey Howell off my team simply because he's in the Hall of Fame and he was a very good player back in the 50s. So, this team, of course, is coached by none other than Chuck Daly. This picture is horrendous, so don't butcher me on that, saying that doesn't look like Chuck. But you have very limited options with your face pictures for coaches. This was one of the very few that I could find that has the hairdo like Chuck used to have. I don't want to say Chuck's hair was like that, but it was pretty similar. That's how he used to wear his hair. So Chuck Daly, hands down, the all-time greatest coach of the Pistons, one of the all-time greatest coaches ever, in the NBA. So hopefully you guys agree with my choices. Again, I know the Stackhouse choice might not be the most popular, but I look at it as I'm putting two Hall of Famers on this team, and somebody's got to go. So Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for future episodes, and I look forward to sharing more NBA 2K19 videos with you.